All right, let's move over to the Effects tab. The Effects tab at the top has a macro section, which is really cool, and it can do a lot of really powerful things. And then at the bottom you have 3 slot-based effects, and you can put those on in any order. So I'm going to choose tape delay. And this one's really cool because it has a little bit of like wow and tape speed, and it rolls off kind of the high end of the effect. So you have a lot of controls over all of these separate effects through these knobs. Ping pong delay goes back and forth, and you can change the tempo of each side. Distortions, different than the distortion on the main tab, so you can kind of stack distortions. It's also interesting to add an eVerb, like an electronic reverb, and put it real big size, and then put a distortion after that, because it chews up the reverb effect. So playing around with the order of those effects is really fun. So have a fun time with that effects section. What we really need to talk about is this macro or expression section at the top, because all of these little knobs can make a big impact on your creative workflow. These 2 big knobs at the top, Expression 1 and Expression 2, act as macros, and they control 4 or 5 parameters at the same time. All of these parameters are effects that exist elsewhere in other tabs, and I'll show you what they're connected to. So I have Expression 1 mapped to my mod wheel, so I can control that really easily right here. And right now, it's not doing anything because I haven't turned any of these knobs on. So I'm going to turn on cutoff, and right now this little knob is at 75%, which basically means this knob has the ability to control the cutoff knob 75% of its current value. So cutoff is here at 100%. Go back to effects, and I'm going to turn this up and down, and you can see that effect. See, it only goes down to 75% down, even though I'm all the way down on my mod wheel. So what's really cool is that you can set each of these effects. I'm going to turn on drive, and I'm going to turn on drive to only 15%. So I go back here, and drive is only going to move just a little bit while cutoff is swinging wildly. This gets really interesting when you're combining 4 or 5 together, because as you adjust this knob, so I'm going to turn release up to 50%, so you can see how all of those knobs here are changing differently based on the percentages that I selected in that macro section. This gets really interesting because I'm controlling 4 effects at the same time with this one macro knob. And I'll go through each of them individually. So cutoff and drive, like I said, are right here. That's the cutoff frequency right there, and the drive is the drive amount that shows up here. Gain LFO is connected to the mods tab, the speed. So like this. Really cool effect. And if I turn that down, it would only do a much smaller range on that speed. And the release button is connected to this release knob on the home page. So again, you can see how cool it is that one knob is controlling a bunch of different things. Let's move on to Expression 2. This macro controls pitch LFO, reverb, ARP rate, filter LFO, and pitch. So it can do a lot of really cool stuff at the same time, and I recommend leaving pitch at 50%. Kind of where I've set these knobs is the recommended use, because pitch LFO gets really crazy if you put it any more than like 15 or 20%, but it's totally up to you. Pitch LFO is connected to the depth here and the pitch LFO on the mods tab. So you can see it's only moving a little bit because that warble gets really out of tune really fast. Reverb is connected to reverb on the main tab. It's important to note that if one of these is turned on, it activates the LFO that it corresponds to. The same is true of ARP rate. ARP is currently off, you see on the ARP tab, But when I turn ARP rate on here, it also engages this ARP button. It's going to speed up and slow down that ARP, which is really cool. And you have effect over the filter LFO as well. And that turned on that one as well. And then obviously pitch changes the pitch of the entire instrument. Again, I would leave that at 50% so that you don't end up offsetting the pitch of your whole instrument on accident. So that's how the macro section works, and I'm sure you're going to find some really creative ways to use those expression knobs to blend a bunch of different effects together and to shape your sound as you go. Keep in mind that you can right-click on either of those and apply them to whatever MIDI CC that you want to.